Okay, we're going to start the meeting. We want to welcome everyone to the joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and a successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. So we will start with a call to order and a roll call.
Councilmember Savage.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Here.
Mayor Lemus.
Here.
Show Councilmember Sparks as absent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving to the approval of minutes and notice a waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and are adopted under this agenda. We have two. We have the regular meeting of March 24th and a special meeting of March 24th, 2026. Do we have any questions or changes? Okay, so we'll...
And just the header on the special meeting says regular meeting. It needs to be corrected. That's all.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, that's the next thing. We're just asking questions first. Okay, so we got that change. Okay, we're going to open up to public comment then on the minutes of the regular meeting and the special meeting of March 24th, 2026. Anyone in the room want public comment? Okay, go ahead and come forward, state your name.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but according to the Brown Act, I don't have to give you my name. And if Mr. Patterson would give me the 4 minutes that I'd asked him to, I'd appreciate it. Speaking to the minutes of the special meeting, 2025, or 2525 of the special meeting, I said that during the public comment portion, which is separate from the item that you were considering, I said that I wanted to speak on that item during the time when that item was being considered. Instead, your city attorney said no. Anyway, I've had a large problem with the way you, Mayor Lemus, and your attorney, city attorney, known as Allie, because you didn't have enough respect for her to give her last name, handle public comment during your special meeting between the council and the police advisory committee. At this point, I have to ask the question, is there not one attorney at Redwood Law who is competent or knowledgeable enough to read and comprehend the Ralph M. Brown Act? There are 2 points. First, you don't combine public comment on a non-agenda item with the one on the agenda. In the fact, Mayor, your ignorance and annoyance at having to follow the law is continually exposed despite being instructed by the public many times while Mr. Ford presided as mayor. If you're incapable of understanding that public comment is for items not on the agenda, you have no business, which is what I was commenting on, you have no business running for any office, especially for supervisor, let alone dog catcher. You should not have allowed comment on the following agenda item, which was the main item on the agenda, during public comment on items not on the agenda. Then you compound this stupidity by asking advice from yet another malfeasant city attorney, just as bad as Mr. Bacher, who tells you that you don't have to take comment before or during the item's consideration. I even told you via Zoom that I was going to save my comments on that item during public comment, and it's not a great leap to believe this proves you people don't even listen to what is being said unless it comes from your liberal loon supporters. Second, Mr. Ford failed to identify why he was not attending in person as required by 54953.8.3a. And it says on 54954.3 that any item of interest to the public before or during the legislative body's consideration of the item, you get to comment on. It also says that's for regular meetings. It also says that for special meetings. And the only time you don't is if this has already been considered at an earlier meeting. Now, that being said, the legislative body, 54953.8.3a, says you can conduct the teleconference meeting, but you have to give a general description of the circumstances related to the need to appear remotely at a given meeting. And it lists them, 1 through 7. And none of them says that you can do this because you need to go to a dog pound or an SPCA and conduct it there. They're all medical reasons for either a family member or somebody else. So frankly, you held an illegal meeting. Another aspect missed by your city clerk is that I attempted to protest by raising my hand after Mr. Barrett had made the same comments that I would have made. Mr. Patterson fails to inform you of a hand raise due to Allie's response to taking public comment on that item. This conduct robs your citizens and I of our right to comment according to the Brown Act. In conclusion, you need to address these flaws immediately. You need to replace Redwood Law as your to this litigation. All of you in the public, all thank you.
Councilor Naru want public comment on the minutes? Okay, I'll bring it back to the city council. Do we have a motion or? Oh, yeah, Zoom attendees. Let's go to Zoom. Do we have any hands on Zoom?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lemus. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. The first hand is from Jessica N. You have the floor.
Hi, good evening, Council. I'm gonna kind of say a little bit of what the last speaker had said. I also didn't get a chance because I thought there was going to be another opportunity to speak. The person who identified, who I'm assuming we just spoke, was identified as caller 8409 at an hour and 49 minutes in. He had stated he was going to save his other comments for the agenda item for the later time. And I then did not raise my hand thinking that that was accurate. After the city attorney had said that it was not required for it to be reopened, I noticed that it did not get reopened. And when I heard her say that it's not required, it doesn't mean that you couldn't have done so. It just meant that you did not have to, which you then did not do. I had actually gone into a deep dive into Google and tried to figure out if that was right or wrong. It seems to be accurate from what I can find. So I didn't want to say a whole lot other than previous special meetings from November 18th, 2025 and February 18th, 2025, both noted as special meetings did allow for public comment after the special agenda items. So it was just inconsistent with what we have done previously. So I just felt like I did get a little bit short end of that stick also. That's all. Thank you.
There are no further hands on Zoom. Mayor Lemus, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Could I ask that we ask the city
Sure.
attorney to respond to both the
Clarification?
public comment at special meetings issue and the question of Brown Act remote attendance?
So I wasn't at that last meeting, but it was a special meeting, and special meetings do not require general public comment to be offered, and it sounds like that's what the issue was at the last meeting. There was no general public comment. There was comment taken on the specific items that were on the agenda. That is a correct statement of the Brown Act. I can't really comment on the rest of it because I wasn't there, and I don't know all the facts. Councilmember Ford participated remotely. Maybe Kevin can help me out.
The classic Brown Act provisions.
Oh, it was under the traditional Brown Act provision where the council member indicated where he was, and so we comply with a different Brown Act provision than the just cause provisions, where a council member can announce after the agenda has already been posted that they have an illness or a family issue that prevents them from participating in person, and in those circumstances can participate remotely, and there are certain requirements regarding that. It didn't happen in this case because the council member's remote location was disclosed on the agenda.
Thank you. And I just want to, I'm happy to make a motion too, but I want the mayor introduced public comment at that special meeting by saying, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54954.3a, members of the public wishing to address the council may do so at the beginning of the special meeting, and such comment shall be limited to the special meeting topic. So it was announced that was the opportunity to comment on the special meeting topic. That being said, yeah, we need to do better. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
So I move to adopt the special meeting minutes. I won't make the motion on the regular meeting because I wasn't present for that.
Okay, so we're taking it in two parts. So you make a motion for the special meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then do we have a motion on the other, the regular meeting?
I'll make a motion for the minutes on the regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
With one
I'll abstain.
abstention. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item is agenda review, and I think there might be some changes. City Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I was just going to suggest that after consent, before we get into the public, well, actually, let me amend that. So in public hearing, I'm just suggesting that we flip the two public hearing items. So move item 7B first before 7A.
Okay.
7B should be a fairly
Okay,
quick
is it-
item, so just to,
Okay,
that's
everyone
the
okay with
reason
that?
why.
Any questions on that? Okay. Do we?
Because we made a
Okay.
change.
Okay, so since we made a change, we're going to open it up for a public comment. So in the room, is there public comment on the change that we just made? Okay, go ahead and come forward.
I wasn't planning on coming up here on this item, but after listening to the questions from Mr. Ford to Mr. Bacher, I have to ask the question, just how long do you have to continue using traditional rules of the Brown Act versus what has been put into law that is effective now? This is nonsense. The law says not only do you have to identify, but your minutes, which I've reviewed, are supposed to contain why Mr. Ford was not at this meeting. A general description. That was not given. Once again, you've broken the law. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment in the room on the item that we just changed under agenda review? What about on Zoom?
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I think we're in agreement that we changed that. Okay. All right, let's go to the next item. The next item is citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2025-03, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time when a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the timer indicator lights will display yellow when there are 30 seconds remaining and red when time is expired. So we'll start this time on Zoom and see if there's any comments for citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
Hi, I sent in a written comment, and it's regarding the changes to public transit in Cotati. We've been severely affected. I spoke at the Sonoma County Transportation Authority meeting yesterday. Golden Gate Transit is no longer going through Sonoma County except for, and especially Cotati, other than a few commute ones, which only go to Rohnert Park. There's also that Route 44 skips going by Walgreens and all that and just goes to the hub. So you have a whole bunch of people who can't get to the Cotati Hotel when it's done, or Walgreens, and they all have to walk to the one. It's going to impact the Redwood Row and Cotati Village and Cotati Cottage because they have exactly one bus going from Guerneville to SSU, one coming eastbound in the morning and one going out. So you'll be in a transit desert if you live in Cotati Village 1 or Cotati Village 2 or Redwood Row. And you can't even get to Rohnert Park because there's no bus in front of Lowe's. The other thing is they changed the Route 10 and all the Rohnert Park buses, and it's still only one way. They extended the smart train hours, but the Route 10 only goes to the Transit Mall, and it is done at 5 o'clock. There's no Sunday service. It's very limited on Saturday. So it's going to affect anybody going to SSU and anything. And I did hear from the director, and they are going to consider this she said bi-directional was her words today, that they'll try to make it bi-directional to SU. But this is a horrible, we've lost probably 75% of our transit options here in Cotati over this. It's called, I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically Golden Gate Transit taking money out of providing service to Sonoma County and doing the rides from San Rafael to San Francisco. And because we're such a small city, we weren't considered very much because they did a lot by population. And I'm sure Susan Harvey will tell you much more later on in her report. But I just think this information, you have a lot of confused people here in Cotati. Why there's no Golden Gate Transit. It's very popular on Nextdoor, and they're hearing nothing from the city. And also this, like my mom's caregivers now will have to walk from our end of town to the train station, which is over a mile, and there's nothing planned or anything. But the director today did say they will look into having a bus route that goes to the west side of Cotati too. So that's all I want to say. It was very long. Okay, thanks, bye.
The next hand is from Jessica N. You have the floor.
Hi, good evening, Council again. I'm sorry, I don't have very many nice things to say today. I really do apologize. I don't mean anything by it. I actually have a huge email written out, and I was going to read it today, but I think maybe what I'll do is ask to be referred to someone I can send this to. I just wanted to raise some concerns about a pattern of unprofessional conduct by a member of the Planning Commission. Unfortunately, their meetings get canceled a lot, and I'm not sure exactly who to address these with. I do actually want to give some dates and some times that if the council would look into it. I do know that the council because we don't vote on it, the council votes on who gets to be in the Planning Commission. So I'm hopeful that you guys can look at these concerns and come up with your own opinions. Maybe these are just my emotions, but there's one council member who I do have some concerns about their conduct. The March 16th meeting, the last 2 minutes in, I felt that one of the planning commissioners said something pretty insensitive. I think it was meant as a joke, lighthearted joke, but it did not come across that way. And I feel like those meetings are meant to be, remain professional for the whole entire community. Within that same meeting, truck vendors were referred to by the same commissioner as roach coaches, which I believe is a little derogatory. And then again on January 20th, at about an hour and 58 minutes in, the same commissioner had shown some unfaith, non-faith in our code enforcement, and then decided that she would just take matters into her own hands and talk to this brick and mortar business about their signage on their own. All things which combined together show me, that this is not someone that I think should be on the Planning Commission. I think this is someone who has their own agenda for things. So if someone could give me a reference as to where to send this to, I'd really appreciate that. I just wanted to raise those concerns, and I didn't know exactly where to go. That's it.
There are no further hands on Zoom.
And we'll address the question after we finish the public comments. Anyone in the room that would like to comment on citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items? Okay, go ahead and come forward.
I would have liked somebody else to come up, but it doesn't seem like anybody else is willing to speak on this. Cotati, the city that just keeps on giving. It's amazing the stuff that we hear from the public about Planning Commission and others. Now that I'm a little more calmed down, that I got some of the things off my chest, I'd like to comment not on the item that's on the agenda, but on the last meeting where I was not able to comment. You know, I listened to this meeting, the special meeting, for about an hour and a half, reviewed the whole thing so I could speak to it. And I kind of wondering, you know, what it is we're trying to accomplish. We have people coming up, all the same people, talking about social justice, and JFK saying, if not us, who, and if not, when. Well, you know, that can be applied two ways. Instead, you had only one view coming at you. And I hate to say it, but all the people that were coming up here were all white, and the majority of them were female, all from emotion, not from logic. You had your police chief telling you the problems with this ordinance that are coming up. This is what I would have said, too. You also had Damien with one hell of a presentation, whether he got it from the source, I don't know where he got it from, whether it was from a City Managers Association or what, but it was very good. And he warned you in there. Legally debatable, it's expensive having to go to litigation, enforcement by city attorneys, code enforcement against the federal government. Your code enforcement people can't even do it on their own citizens, let alone going on taking on an agency that large. So I'm wondering, I mean, are we just up here twiddling our thumbs, and what are you trying to do? You're trying to protect the citizens of Cotati from rapists and murderers? I mean, who's going to sort them out, Mr. Savage? You're the one that was up there saying, oh, we want to give comfort to our citizens. Okay, how do we know who's doing what and who isn't living next door to us? I think that you're going down the wrong path with this, and we'll speak more of it when we get to that item on the agenda. But I'm just listening to this and can't believe you spend an hour and a half of your time on something you really can't do anything about. The federal government has the constitutional authority to go after illegal immigration. And if you're here illegally, you broke the law. Either you're in favor of the law or you change the law. And you can't do it because it takes a constitutional amendment to take that authority away from the federal government. And that ain't going to happen. Thank you.
Any other commenters in the room? Okay, come forward, please. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Council. I'd like to first reflect, for the last year or so, how well Zoom has been working. The way that this Council is accessible to everybody outside this room, and we can tune into what's actually going on, the real business of the city. So first of all, I'd just like to really say I appreciate that. Last week, there was a Sonoma-LAFCO meeting on a proposed Alexander Valley Water District. Susan Harvey, Councilwoman Susan Harvey, is on that council, on that LAFCO district, and I'd like to thank her for her detailed quizzing of the applicant on how they propose to monitor water withdrawals out the Russian River. That is, would they put in meters to reasonably accurately be able to say what the water volume was being withdrawn? There was a lawyer there, and he was waving his arms an awful lot on this subject. The Upper Russian River is a living river with lots of beneficial usages that support a wide ecological community. And it's beneficial to have some transparency over the way that that upper river has been monitored. The water agency Water Board does require that certain volumetric water extractions are reported in real time. Now, there's a benefit in that transparency and having real-time visibility because the Sonoma Water Agency is also mandated to keep flows going in that river. And if it can actually see who's taking the water out, if the riparian owners actually declare what water they're likely to take out of the river, the Russian River, the Upper Russian River, it's likely to make it a lot easier to manage the whole of the Russian River, the Upper Russian River. Now, there's a reason for this. The Water Board declared that the Russian River was fully appropriated in 1988. And as you probably remember, when Supervisor Rabbit gave an update in this chamber, I asked about the Upper Russian River flows and who might be paying for potential water transfers from the Eel River. Supervisor Rabbit said the reason was to maintain minimal flows in the Upper Russian River And during the summertime, the water agency is to maintain that based on the hydrologic index, which is based on Lake Mendocino. So that could mean that the water contractors pay for a lot of this water. WaterAid, the Alexander Valley Water District, if it declares what water is coming out of the river, should be able to pay for that water. So I think there's a nexus going on in here between three agencies, and there's a value in keeping some transparency. So I'm just advocating for transparency when, I know there's a lot of people going to agency meetings here, but that they keep that visible. Thank you very much.
Anyone else in the room would like to comment? Citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue on to consent calendar. Consent calendar, we have 3 items.
Pardon me, Mary, did you want to address the question about
Oh, yes,
where to refer?
yes, I had my question, yes. Thank you. So staff, the question about who to send comments about the Planning Commission?
Well, so just in general, like any type of comment of any type can always be sent to, the simple thing is just to send it to info, I-N-F-O, @cotatiecity.gov. It's easy to spell. Everyone can know that. So if you send an email there, we'll get it and we'll route it to the correct department to respond to the question. The commenter can also contact the city manager's office and either bring the letter in person, or they can certainly email it to myself, to me directly, and I can make sure it gets to the appropriate, I work with the appropriate departments to respond to the questions. It's just the first letter, the first name and last name, so D-O-B-I-D. It's also on the website. You can find my email address.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so there's different ways to send information to city and city manager. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to the next item, consent calendar. So we have 3 items on our consent calendar. Any questions from council on any of the 3 items that we have? Okay. Okay, so we'll open it up to, we already had public comment, so then we'll go ahead and entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item that we're doing is direction on future agenda items. Do we have anyone that wants the future agenda item? No? Okay, so we'll move on to public hearings. So the first public hearing, we're taking 7B first, is an introduction and first reading of an ordinance to rezoning multiple parcels to the transit-oriented communities and Santero Way zoning districts and make any further needed revisions to implement the TOC land use policies.
Mayor, I need to recuse myself since I live in that zoning area.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll wait for Councilmember Savage and then we'll go into the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus, Council. The item tonight, 7B, going to the next slide, is the introduction and first reading of an ordinance to rezone the specific parcels that were included in the transit-oriented communities and Santero Way specific plan rezoning. Essentially, this is a housekeeping item to formally redesignate those parcels, and they are listed by address and parcel number in an attachment to the ordinance, as the council would have seen. We'll go to and this should be the last step in finalizing TOC, except there were some curveballs, and we'll talk about that a little bit regarding changes that have come down from MTC since we last spoke. So just summarizing the background, council will recall the rezoning initially started to implement the Santero Way specific plan update. It was expanded to implement the transit-oriented communities policies based on direction from ABAG MTC. And on February 25th of this year, MTC voted to separate One Bay Area grant funding from transit-oriented communities compliance. That's a big change. For the last 2 years, they've been telling us you must be TOC compliant in order to qualify for One Bay Area grant funds. At the last minute, after getting a lot of pushback from a lot of communities who had not been able to meet those directions and obligations, they capitulated to those other communities that they heard about and separated One Bay Area grant funding from transit-oriented communities compliance. They did recognize, or attempt to recognize, a lot of the hard work by some of the other jurisdictions that have moved to implement the direction that they've been pushing for the last several years. And they replaced it with a $45 million incentive pot of money that's intended to go only to those who are deemed fully compliant with TOC. That's an 85-point score and above based on the previous scoring criteria. So we'll go to the next slide. So the land use changes that are proposed in this ordinance are to identify all of the parcels for rezoning by address, as we talked about, and respond to the Planning Commission recommendation to remove the condominium conversion TOC preservation policy, which was intended to kind of respond to some of the developer concerns. The commission, or the council will recall, we had heard from some developers expressing concern over proposed changes that required a one-to-one replacement of any rental units converted to condominiums, and there was concern that that would affect their ability to get financing. Staff had proposed some changes. In light of the separation of requirements from TOC and OBAG grant funding, staff and the Planning Commission agreed to essentially table that conversation, not make any changes to the condominium conversion ordinance currently, and just rezone the parcels. And we'll get into the details a little bit more. The next slide has a map highlighting exactly which properties we're talking about. And you advance the slide once, it'll highlight the properties proposed to be rezoned Santero Way. The next slide, or the next advance, will highlight the parcels proposed to be rezoned transit-oriented communities. And the council will see that the Oliver Shopping Center parcel is not included in that rezoning. We'll go to the next slide. As was previously discussed, changes to the city ordinance were proposed to meet some of the policy direction regarding the preservation of affordable housing units. As I summarized, the developer input had some concerns over that. Staff had proposed applying this one-to-one replacement only for existing homes that are proposed to be converted. The council expressed some hesitancy at that. It wasn't included in the last ordinance. And there was some concern that we may only receive partial compliance for that policy anyway at that time. Given the changes being pushed down by MTC, and the concerns that were talked about at the council level regarding kind of inequity or inequality that could create with existing and future units, the commission recommended just to leave the current zoning language alone, which has a lot of tenant protections already baked into it. And we do feel like we're likely to get some credit for our existing policies. And so that did work out to be the Planning Commission recommendation, which essentially means that the only elements proposed for change in the ordinance tonight are the actual rezoning of the properties as we've been talking about for now over a year. We'll go to the next slide. So this is an update trying to summarize some of the changes that ABAG MTC has provided to us. You know, they, again, heard a lot of jurisdictions that hadn't been able to keep up with their policy direction, and so they were trying to increase flexibility, you know, recognize some of the changes in state law that had come down that actually got in front of some of their TOC policies, and from their perspective, simplify what was needed from the local governments. They've provided direction to their staff to update their administrative guidance on how we're supposed to meet full compliance, and they've now pushed their compliance deadline to July 1st, 2027. So we have a lot of time. I still have asked to get our score because we're fully submitted. They have not provided that. I think it's probably because they're trying to respond to all of the kind of changing landscape on the staff level at MTC. I will bring back an update on what our score is, and I do want to highlight one other slide, actually two more, sorry. This is that incentive program. In summary, as I mentioned, $45 million. They're only expecting about 10 to 15 jurisdictions to qualify for that, so there is a chance that if we're fully compliant, we would get a decent chunk of that money. The city manager reminded me that there's actually an extra $5 million set aside just for North Bay jurisdictions, so that's a benefit. But again, we don't know enough details about how they're going to score all of our policy changes yet to really be able to hone in on any last-minute tweaks that we might need to make to achieve full compliance. And this next slide, I do want to highlight. So this is, there's a compliance portal where you submit all of your information and they score and rank it. This is one of the pages. And I do want to highlight that removing the Oliver's parcel, because it's such a large percentage of that acreage over there, did drop our overall density from the 25 to 35 unit range that they're expected us to meet to be TOC compliant to 22.5 to 31 units approximately per acre. And so that's not likely to be compliant, and I don't know how they're going to score us regarding basically how many points we're going to get for that partial density compliance element. So I just want to highlight all that. I apologize for kind of the uncertainty and for the last minute changes from the staff perspective at our city. This was very much a last minute change and very much out of order with the direction that we have been hearing for over a year. We'll move on to the next slide, and that's the recommendation. And it's from the Planning Commission that the City Council introduce and conduct the first reading of the ordinance to implement the proposed zoning map changes, finalize TOC, and delay any additional changes to pursue full compliance until the current score is provided by ABAG MTC. And with that, I'm available for any questions. And again, I do apologize for kind of the last minute changes that may have affected your decision-making when we made those decisions.
Okay, so do we have questions from City Council? Go ahead, Councilmember.
Do you have a sense of whether they're likely to use the set-aside pot to just sort of fill the TOC compliant communities with their normal allocation first? Like, is it really an extra pot? Will we get have our fair shot at the overall pot plus a shot at a chunk of the extra if we reach a score of 85?
I do see it as being a true incentive, extra bonus, and I don't know if the city manager wants to add his more familiarity with those funding, but.
That was the intent, because North Bay communities are perceived as different than the Inner Bay Area communities that are also in that same group of 9 Bay Area counties. So it was intended to be an incentive, because I think the rationale, as I understood it, was because we're not heavily urbanized like a lot of the Bay Area counties, we have more work to do infrastructure-wise to get us to a TOC compliant area. And so I think that was ABAG MTC's, I'm sure under lobbying from our transit agencies up here, you know, our CMAs up in the North Bay. But I think that was their solution to try to give us a little bit of extra funding to deal with the fact that we're largely suburban and not urbanized. Yeah.
So that addresses the 5 million, but I was wondering about the 45 million. Is that actually sort of extra money for TOC compliant places?
It's supposed to be available to all counties.
And
Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My sense was that they truly were trying to recognize the jurisdictions that did take their direction seriously and make the extra effort to implement these policies and really, you know, get some transit-oriented development support around their transit hubs. I think it was a way to try to kind of walk on both sides of the line.
So what is the funding application kind of timeline for OBAG?
You know, I think it's, I think some preliminary work's going to even be starting later this year, this calendar year. But now the TOC compliance deadline got pushed until July 1 of 2027. So there's going to be a bit of an iterative process there.
Okay.
In other words, ABAG MTC said we were going to have it midsummer, like July 1 of this year was the original deadline. As part of this whole conversation that Noah had mentioned, they pushed it out a year, which then gets it a little bit behind the process on the OBAG application and cycle.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm still trying to understand. For this, is OBAG an annual thing?
No. It's like every four years. Yeah.
And so for this cycle, what is the cutoff date for achieving full compliance in order to be eligible? Is it next July?
Mm-hmm. Next July 1, 27.
So places have to apply before they know if they're eligible.
Yeah, I think probably what will happen just logistically is they'll have the OBAG funding applications, and maybe the first, because there'll be multiple rounds of funding through that 4-year cycle. And maybe the first round isn't TOC funding, maybe round 2 becomes TOC funding just because of the delay. It might just be staggered like that, but I haven't heard anything official from MTC.
My sense is they're still really trying to work out the details. It was a last minute change
Yeah.
that their staff, I don't think, was even really prepared for.
So if we do come back with a score of 84, we'll have time to try to figure out a way to get fully compliant before, okay.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, you had questions?
Noah, do we have any sense as to when they're going to get back to us with a score?
No, I've actually sent several emails with no response, and I've responded in the portal to questions that they had, and it's been crickets. And I think it's probably because their world was changing with policy direction coming from their board, and they just are trying to navigate all of that, but that's just speculation.
So here's my concern. My concern is they moved the goalposts, and they don't want to give us a score even though we got ours in on time and worked hard to get it there, and that they're not going to give us a score until the people that they held back for get theirs in, and they can score them and then score everyone else. That's really my concern, is that they're not going to score those that met their deadlines, that they're going to wait till their chosen ones, if you will, get their papers in.
I hear the concern. I can, following up from this meeting, because what this will allow me to do is say, we've made all actions, where are you at with your scoring? And I can reiterate the concern I'm hearing from the dais in my emails to them to try to level up the importance of them getting back to us and giving us an update.
Yeah,
I will say they do seem very appreciative of the efforts made by Cotati. I mean, we were called out in their board meeting as an example, because a lot of the small cities were the ones who were saying, hey, we can't do this. You're putting too many mandates on us. We don't have the ability to jump through all of these hoops. And it allowed them to kind of point to us as an example of, hey, some cities can do this if you prioritize really trying to get behind getting some housing built. And so,
Do we know the percentage of cities that were able to comply within the deadline? Did they give that
I don't
sense
think
of
they've
things?
scored people totally yet, so we don't know.
nobody's been scored yet. It's my
No,
understanding.
I know those have not been scored, but how many have been turned in and met the original deadline?
I don't think very many had even submitted. So we're well ahead of a majority of the jurisdictions. I don't have a percentage, but.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that, but I am reluctant to have a lot of faith in that process, since, I mean, that's a really big deal to, at the 11th hour, change the goalposts by a year, actually 18 months. Yeah, so, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for sending that letter and including that information. I had a couple questions on the housing preservation. You had said about our code language doesn't include the mandate, like 1-to-1 or like housing preservation. Is that something that we'll be looking at to include?
So when we get our score, we can bring back the areas where we're non-compliant and kind of evaluate all of those options to decide how to get across the goalpost if we're not, or the goal line, I should say, if we're not, we don't meet the 85-point threshold.
And then my other question is on the countywide protection program or local policy. Do we have one, or do we have someone to partner with on a countywide protection program, a local policy program?
For tenant protection, we have a lot of, because we're so small, we don't have any dedicated housing authority staff. We partner with a lot of nonprofits and also the county to kind of expand the services that are available to our community members and tenants.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then we'll open the public hearing, and we'll start in a room. If there's anyone in the room that wanted to comment on and talk about this item, please come forward. Anyone in the room first? No? Okay, we'll go to the Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lemus. Once again, Zoom attendees, use that raise hand icon to make a comment on this item. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
Hi. Mine's sort of a question, sort of continued discussion. MTC took all the Golden Gate out with this mascot program, and they limited most of the transit to like East Cotati Hub and everything. And they only made it one way to the train station. Is this going to affect, they want high density on Santera Way, but then everybody's going to have to drive to the train station. And anyways, will this affect our score now that there's not transit options? Because the information you sent in on the TOC was based on how it was, and now it's going to be new numbers if they're scoring it, considering they're the ones that the MTC is the one who put in this new plan. They're going to know that those route numbers are not the same, and there's like Route 48, which would go down East Cotati now only to the Cotati Hub. It's every 2 to 3 hours instead of every like hour and a half, and it's every 3 to 4 hours on Saturday and Sunday. So I'm wondering if these changes will affect the score. So if you could answer that, or that'd be great. Thank you.
There are no further hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. So close the public hearing, and we'll bring it back to the council. And staff, that was a question about whether the transit option changes will affect our score.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I'm actually not sure. Most of our transit kind of focus has been around the train station, so I'm not sure how the changes to the bus schedule will affect our scoring, but that is something I can inquire about when we talk to them about our overall score and how they're looking at our transit options here in town.
Okay, thank you. You have a question?
I just would like to add to that. So they also increased the train service, so they added more routes on the train service. So there might be a little bit of a balance there as far as one decrease, one increase. And I was going to talk about it a little bit more in my report, but Sonoma County Transit has not done their internal look at how they need to change the routes yet. The whole mascots program was really focused on getting the coordination up and down 101. So that was really their focus. Now all of the agencies within the county are looking internally at the different regions and seeing how to better do that. And Sonoma County Transit is going to be looking at a transportation strategic plan, and that's going to be starting very soon. And that's where they're going to fine-tune the routes both within the bus system as well as across the 3 bus vendors we have, because we've got Sonoma County Transit and Petaluma Transit and Santa Rosa. So it's kind of then looking regionally what we can do, and that has not happened yet. And that is to come, starting in probably about June, they said, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, if there's no other comments, then we'll finish with that item. And do you have enough feedback for our second? This is just the first reading.
It just, it needs to be introduced.
Okay. Oh, it needs to be introduced.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I move that we introduce an ordinance to rezone multiple parcels to the transit-oriented communities and Santera Way zoning districts. And there are no further needed revisions in the motion, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so just rezone the parcels.
Second?
Okay. And we'll do a roll call since this is a public hearing.
Councilmember Ford,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey,
Yes.
Mayor Lemus.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, which is a food and mobile business ordinance. If we can bring Councilmember Savage back forward. Okay, so this is a public hearing, and it's the Food and Mobile Business Ordinance, and we have a report on this.
Good evening, Mayor Lemus and members of the council. This is indeed a public hearing on an ordinance for food and mobile businesses. Next slide, please.
Could you pull your mic down a bit?
Yeah, I'm
Point-
sorry. I'm having some space issues here. Okay, is that better?
Thanks, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so public hearing on food and mobile businesses. So this is a wide-ranging item that touches on sidewalk vendors, food trucks and food carts, micro-enterprise home kitchen operations, also known as MICOs, parklets, outdoor dining, urban agriculture, and home occupations. But the underlying goal with all of these proposed regulations is to foster economic development and community vitality while managing the potential impacts of these various businesses. And we are attempting with the draft ordinance, I think as you can probably tell, to address a pretty wide range of situations, some of which are existing, but many of which are potential situations that may arise in the future. And we're trying to throw our arms around all of it in the best way that we can. You looked at some of these ideas at workshops in January, as did the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the draft ordinance in March, made a recommendation, which I'll be sharing with you later on. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with the sidewalk vendors. Sidewalk vendors are regulated by state law, and as you know, the city's latitude to add regulations is very limited when it comes to vendors on public sidewalks, and this includes public paths in parks as well as sidewalks along the street. We are allowed certain standards. And so we're trying to address those as best we can in the ordinance within what's allowed by the state law. So we can require a business license and applicable health permits and a seller's permit. We're allowed to place some locational standards. So this will be just public sidewalks. And I would like to say that food carts that are on private property those are addressed in a separate part of the ordinance that I'll be getting to next. So this is all just on public sidewalks. Can be food carts or merchandise on public sidewalks. So they're not allowed to block sidewalks. They need to maintain accessibility, at least 4 feet of passing space for pedestrians. We can require that they maintain certain distance from street furniture, intersections, events, building entrances, other features of the public sphere in order to keep those functioning as intended, and those are described in detail in the ordinance. We are allowed to prohibit stationary vendors from operating in strictly residential zones. So we placed that requirement into this draft ordinance. We can't restrict roaming vendors based on areas in the city, and we can only restrict stationary vendors from the RR and RVL zones because those are our residential only zones. Next slide, please. So some additional standards. So looking at some operating standards that are all generally based on sort of general health, safety, and welfare. We are proposing that sidewalk vendors occupy a maximum of 25 square feet of area of space, that they only operate during certain hours, and that would be in residential zones, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. in all other zones in the city, and that's consistent with commercial zoning generally in the city. That they maintain a clean environment, that they clean up after themselves, adhere to our performance standards related to various nuisances. There is a health permit requirement that food vendors have permission to use a nearby restroom if they're in one place for more than an hour. So we're including that in our standards. And then standards to keep roaming vendors roaming. so that they only stop to conduct sales. And I want to add here that the state law is very vague about the differences between roaming and stationary vendors. It does not clarify when someone goes from being roaming to stationary and vice versa. And it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of difference in how the state law really addresses those two types of vending, and so we don't address it very much in the proposed ordinance either. We would require that sidewalk vendors not provide a dining area if they're selling food. Next slide, please. And then just kind of on the enforcement administrative side, the state law's general general approach is to decriminalize sidewalk vending. And as such, we are limited in our enforcement abilities. The state law has specific fine and fee standards. Sidewalk vendors can't be given an infraction or misdemeanor. So all of that language is reflected in our code that is exactly what appears in the state law. There is the possibility to require permits from the city for sidewalk vendors, and some cities do that. At this time, since we have relatively few sidewalk vendors and we don't necessarily anticipate a lot of them at this point, the staff is not recommending that we go with a permit at this point. Okay, next slide, please. So that was sidewalk vendors. So I'm going to move on to food trucks and food carts. So food trucks are not addressed by state law. Food carts, if they are not on the sidewalk, are also not addressed by state law. Okay, so this is a different section of the proposed ordinance that really relates to sort of a whole different category of activities than sidewalk vending. The ordinance addresses food trucks and food carts at events, with sort of general operational standards in temporary parklets on public parking spaces, on private commercial properties, and then a special set of standards for the commercial and industrial zoning district. So the basic standards for all those situations include a business license, health permit, maintaining clean, litter-free conditions, avoiding, coming into conflict with our various nuisance requirements that are in the code. Next slide, please. The ordinance is proposing that food trucks and food carts be allowed to operate on privately owned properties. And that would be in any of the non-strictly residential zoning districts in the city. So there'd be any commercial, industrial, mixed use, or specific plan district. We would propose further that they be allowed to operate by right if they can comply with all of the standards in the ordinance, and that does include a zoning clearance. So they would still come to the city. Zoning clearance is something that a business obtains when it comes in for its business license. So we would be able then to ask them some more questions about their operation. We're thinking about having a special sort of questionnaire for food trucks and food carts that goes with the business license application. However, a minor use permit would be required in certain situations, and those would include if the proposed site is, the location for the food truck or cart is within 100 feet of a dwelling unit that's on another property, and if that property is residentially zoned. And this is consistent with what we're proposing for outdoor dining as well. Another instance with a minor use permit would be in the downtown specific plan historic core zone, and that's the dark purple that you see on the map there. And then finally, if multiple food trucks are proposed on a property at one time, as in like a food truck park, that would also require a minor use permit. Next slide, please. So related to this question of being able to operate on private property, we're proposing that the site could be occupied by any type of business as its primary use, or could even be a vacant site. And as you may remember, currently, we really only allow food trucks on restaurant properties in the city. So this could be any type of business, or could be that there is no other business on the site. The food cart, so if it's a food cart, we're not actually talking about an actual cart necessarily. It could be more like a food stand, and you can kind of see in that upper corner there on the right-hand side, that's more of a stand. It's a table underneath a pop-up tent. So, when we say food cart, we're speaking fairly broadly, but a kind of contained, temporary, mobile apparatus. So a food cart would only be able to occupy 100 square feet, which is kind of your standard 10 by 10 pop-up size of a canopy. In addition, food trucks and food carts could provide outdoor dining up to 100 square feet in size on the property. That outdoor dining and the trucks and carts would need to be removed from the site nightly, or stored in some kind of a permitted enclosure within that's on the property. And we might be able to provide exceptions with a minor use permit. There would be certain setback requirements, pretty minimal towards the front side of a property to enable vending to the sidewalk, so up to within 2 feet of the front setback or front property line, and then side and rear setbacks that are a little bit more if it's abutting a residential use, a little bit more generous if up to a non-residential use. And in general, a lot of our commercial zones, the side and rear property or setbacks are actually quite minimal, some of them down to 0 feet. Next slide, please. So more on food trucks and carts on private property. So we're proposing operating standards between 7 and 11, which is in keeping with the commercial operating hours in the city, or that if an adjacent business is open past 11 with a permit, that the food truck, if it has an affiliation with that business, would be able to operate till the closing time of that business. And that's primarily oriented towards businesses that serve alcohol, but not a lot of food, so that patrons can purchase food. The food trucks and carts would need to have access to 2 parking spaces, which could be shared with other uses. Placement on the property can't block emergency access or access to other businesses on the site or the required number of parking spaces. And then finally, amplified music would not be allowed unless the business or the property had another kind of permit. So amplified music does require a permit, a special event permit, a limited term permit, or a use permit, a full use permit. Okay, next slide, please. So we've added in a sort of alternative set of standards. This is for food trucks that would operate in the commercial industrial zone. And so what I was just speaking about private property operation, that includes the commercial industrial zone as well. This is for certain situations that are intermittent or really short-term in nature, such as arriving at a work site to provide food for lunch. In the industrial zone. And it would be up to 2 hours in a location maximum. We had 1 hour, but the Planning Commission requested to adjust that to 2. Between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. On private properties or on the street. And this is the only place in the city that we're proposing on the street for food truck operation, except for parklets. And I'll come to that later. So there'd be a requirement that they move within 2 hours to another location at least 500 feet away, that they only vent to the sidewalk side for safety, that they not block the operation of the street or the sidewalk, and that they only be located on streets where the traffic or the speed limit is 30 or below, which in the commercial industrial zone is all of the streets except Redwood Drive. So in exchange for this being sort of short-term operation, the food trucks would have a little bit more leeway in terms of the parking requirements, the setback requirements, than you would see on private properties where they're allowed to operate anytime within the full allowable 7 to 11 or closing time. Next slide, please. Okay. So coming to temporary parklets. So as you know, parklets are food service on a parking space or parking spaces. And we've had these standards in place for a while. Very few businesses have taken advantage of it. The parklet guidelines don't reside in the code. They are kind of a living document that's informed by, updates from, advice from all of the different departments and is implemented at the staff level. City approval is required for any parklet. When the parklet is on public parking, a license agreement with the city is required. So, and parklets can be, so what we're suggesting is some updates to those, and we do want to get feedback from the council, even if that's not part of the ordinance. So we're going to suggest that parklets can be any type of business host. So say you had a bookstore. We don't have a bookstore. If we had a bookstore, an art gallery, so they wanted to host a parklet out front. So, that type of, or a real estate office, they wanted to have a parklet out front, short-term, temporary parklet, they would be allowed to do that. We're also proposing that food trucks and food carts be allowed in temporary parklets, and that the temporary parklets could operate up to 40 days out of a year total, that they could operate up to 3 days in a row with a minimum of 4 days break in between. That when a parklet is operating, there can't be another parklet also operating within 100 feet. And that all parts of temporary parklets are removed each night, which is different from a permanent parklet, which is there for some extended period of time. And then once again, amplified music would require a permit. Next slide, please. Okay, so the outdoor dining. So currently the code requires a minor use permit for outdoor dining that's on private property, and the language is abutting a residential use in certain districts, the CD district, the specific plan districts, and that is without regard to where the outdoor dining is on the property and what the underlying zoning is of any adjacent residential uses or the abutting residential use. And so the ordinance is proposing a kind of a refinement and adjustment to that minor use permit requirement, so that in those zones, CD and the specific plan zones, that the outdoor dining, the minor use permit requirement kicks in when the outdoor dining location itself is within 100 feet of a dwelling that is located on a different property, and that property is zoned residential. So that would include our RVL, RR, NM, NL, and NU zones. If the outdoor dining was on public property, we don't issue use permits, minor use permits for public property, but we would need a license agreement between the city and the business operator. And in that case, we would have the same consideration for the residences that are within 100 feet, that we would do a kind of a notification process, because that's really what happens with the minor use permit process, is it's about notifying the neighboring properties to let them know that something is proposed and allow them to comment and allow the city to make adjustments as needed to reduce impacts. So we do the same through the license agreement process. Okay. Next slide, please. We're getting very close here. So MICOs, micro enterprise home kitchen operations. So as you know, the county opted into state law that authorizes MICOs. When the county did that, all jurisdictions in the county are now required to allow MICOs. And we have very, very little latitude over almost no regulation over MICOs. But it's worthwhile to add them to our land use code. And so we're proposing to do that in the ordinance. And specifically what's helpful here is to clarify that there are some of our nuisance standards that still apply, including noise standards, illegal parking, not blocking the street, things like that. Also reiterating that a business license is required for a MICO. Next slide, please. Okay, just a couple of last proposed standards. These are really kind of cleanup items. The ordinance is proposing that chicken keeping, market gardens, garden stands, and community gardens be allowed in all commercial and mixed use and specific plan districts. Those are all required, well, the first three are required to be accessory to residential uses. And there are standards that apply to manage the impacts of all of those uses. In addition, we're proposing that the home occupation standards be amended to clarify that a home occupation can take place anywhere within a dwelling. Currently, it's restricted to the ground floor, and that can be up to 25% of the total floor area of the dwelling. And we're also adding market gardens and garden stands as home occupations to the standards. Next slide, please. So as I said, the Planning Commission held a public hearing in March and recommended council adoption of the ordinance. They did make some amendments which have been incorporated into the draft ordinance that came to you to allow food trucks to operate for 2 hours in a single location, to extend the closing time for food trucks to match that of the closing time of an adjacent business. They wanted to add stronger language related to dumping and storm drains and clarify that amplified music is allowed with permits, because that wasn't completely clear that that was something that was allowed before. All right, next slide. Okay, we do have a recommendation for you. The Community Development Department and the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council conduct a public hearing and adopt an ordinance amending the Cotati Municipal Code, Title 17, Land Use, and Chapter 9.36, Conduct in Parks, Plazas, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Places, to establish standards for food and mobile businesses. And with that, I'm available to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start with questions of council. Councilmember Ford?
Sure. I've got a couple, mostly around potential conflicts between these new uses and residential uses. So I'm wondering what the rationale is for adding the on a separate property requirement, you know, that a minor use permit is only required for outdoor dining and food trucks on private property if the abutting residential use is on a separate property. And here's the scenario that I'm worried about is a rental project, is not those homes are not separate properties. And so if it's mixed use obviously introduces a lot of conflicts. And if a business that is leasing a retail space on the first floor with rental housing above wants to host a food truck, I don't know, maybe they have a driveway next to them that will fit a food truck. Neither the property owner nor the residents seem to have any say in that decision, or sort of other than nuisance, code enforcement after the fact, any way to affect that decision. So I'm curious why go away from the current practice, which is if it abuts a residential use, needs a minor use permit.
I think the goal is to support the spirit of mixed-use development, which is active commercial ground floor uses with residential above, kind of in its sort of classic sense. Restaurants are allowed in our commercial and mixed-use districts by right. So there can be a restaurant in the ground floor of most of the structures in our commercial districts. And mixed-use districts. The requirement for the minor use permit has also only applied in the specific plan districts and the downtown commercial districts, not the general commercial or the commercial, not general commercial, commercial Grabenstein Highway or commercial East Cotati districts, which are, kind of a large chunk of the mixed-use properties in the city. So this would not actually impact those properties. I think our feeling is that the amplified music is something that would be more likely to contribute to affecting the livability for the upstairs residences, and that requires an additional permit.
Okay, save comments till later. And another technical question is, how do properties that were developed as PUDs fit into this? Is the underlying zoning still in place, and that's what would trigger, you know, how it would be addressed here? Because I thought PUD was the zoning for this.
Yeah, when it comes to PUDs in the city, we refer to what the underlying zoning is for that area, yeah, for that property.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, Vice Mayor?
I have a few questions. So I just want to make sure that I understand this. So for the sidewalk vending, it says sidewalk vending does not require permission from the adjacent property owners. And so I just want to be sure that I'm clear here. So if someone is sidewalk vending, they don't have to ask the business that they're standing in front of, and they can even be in competition with that business, and there's nothing that can be done about that.
That's correct, yeah, yeah. The state law is very clear on that.
Okay, well, that's a little sad, that there should be a non-competitive clause in that law, I would think, because that's not fair to the businesses that, you know, have paid to have their business there. So also in the sidewalk vending in location, you said no operation on private property, roadways, or landscape areas. So sidewalk vending, is it by the mere nature that it has the word sidewalk, and that's why it can't be on private property? Because you consider sidewalk as public property? I'm just trying to differentiate there.
Yeah, the sidewalk is public property, it's public right-of-way. Yeah, and that is really all that the state law applies to. The state law is specifically says public sidewalks and public pedestrian paths, and that includes public parks. And so by virtue of that definition, we're proposing language that would require those sidewalk vendors operating under the state law to refrain from encroaching on private property or the roadway.
Okay.
Or landscaped areas.
I just wanted that clarified, because I just wanted to make sure that I understood that subtle difference there. In one of the things that talks about client-customer visits, says the home occupation shall be operated so as not to require more than 12 vehicle trips per day of clients, customers, and/or visitors to the residence. On-site presence of clients or customers shall be limited to one client or family at a time, and only between the hours of 9 and 8. And I thought that the MECO's stuff was a little bit different than that.
Right, and so, the proposed code section in the ordinance that deals with MECOs actually exempts them from the home occupation standards, and we also noted that in the home occupation standards that MECOs are not considered home occupations according to our code, and that is because the standards that appear in our home occupation section are not standards that we are allowed to apply to MECOs per state law.
Okay. And then lastly, in the design standards, it talks about vendors shall not use portable generators, gasoline, kerosene, outdoor wood-burning ovens, or charcoal barbecues. And I guess my question is, well, what about battery-operated? Because now a lot of things are moving from gasoline to battery. I'm just curious as to, so if they have a battery-operated stove, they can use that?
Yeah,
And that would
yeah,
be-
I think the state law is pretty clear that food preparation as part of the vending operation is allowed. And so, we have that group of types of cooking that we think constitutes a safety hazard or a potential nuisance, and so those are not allowed. We want to place certain standards associated with generator use, but other methods, methods such as batteries, that would be allowed. Yeah.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I have a couple of questions. If a private business has, say, a food truck that comes onto their business, they have to get a Cotati business license. So they have to get a Cotati, the truck has to get a Cotati business license?
That's right.
Okay, so if they have a different one every week, each one has to get a Cotati business license?
That's right.
Okay. Is this a practice in other cities? I'm just curious if it
Yes.
is. Okay.
Yeah, it's very common, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think every city wants their business license from all the food trucks. Yeah, yeah.
And the other question I had is about enforcement. On the sidewalk vending, there was an item here that talks about that sidewalk vendors have to maintain distance from different items, including events. And how is that enforced? Is it by the event organizers or staff or police? Only because, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, enforcement is something that will be a challenge with some of these standards, and we purposely sort of stepped back from some that we thought would be impossible to enforce. So this would really be complaint-driven for the most part, you know. So if a vendor is too close to an event, then yes, the event organizer it would be up to them to, you know, to call the police and ask for enforcement.
Okay. Yeah, because my experience has been that in some events in the past, hot dog vendors come from out of the area, and then they kind of get into the event, and that impacts like the vendors that are selling their own food at the event?
Right.
Okay. All right, so it's just something to kind of keep a pin in. All right, so that was my question, so thank you. So I'm going to open it up now to public hearing. Anyone from the public that may want to speak on this topic, if you want to go ahead and move forward. I have a card here from Bill Katsaros.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As she stated, my name is Bill Katsaros. Together with my wife, we recently purchased Spanky's Bar. And for those that don't know this, it's over at Old Redwood and the Plaza in the historical district. We are very much in favor of this ordinance and applaud staff's efforts to bring it all to you. Our business is very restricted in the size and space that we occupy. We do not have any cooking facilities. We want to offer food to our patrons since they will be imbibing in alcohol. And we think this is a very good effort, meets more than halfway to our needs. And I just wanted to thank everybody involved for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room that would like to make a comment? Please come forward.
My name's Audrey DeVere Hunt. I'm a new business owner as well of the 8 Ball over in the downtown historic district. So I just have a little compliance clarity question because I'm starting to understand that the parklet would be the best way for us to offer any kind of food in our parking lot. If we did pay the permit for a yearly parklet, would the trucks have to individually get MUPs for every event that we had? I understand that they would have to have their Cotati business license, but would they each have to get a permit to be in our parklet if we've paid the yearly parklet permit? That's my only question. And I like this too. I think it's great.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Okay, we'll go to Zoom, and then we'll answer the questions after.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to comment on this item. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
I have a couple things. You have no budget for code enforcement. You've used it all to go after one person. The last 3 years, you've gone over by twice the amount of the code enforcement budget. Where is the money coming from to enforce all these new regulations? And will it be by the same team that has caused so much angst in the city and selective enforcement? So that needs to be addressed. You don't have any money to put in this, to have any of these enforced. Another one is I'm not sure of why this would have code violations do not have a fee reduction, but this ordinance would have one, and it would not be infraction, where everything else in the city is an infraction, so I don't understand why that is so. From what I understand, I was going to bring up the 8 Ball. She's there, but they having food trucks come in, and they're in the DSP, and they're next to Charles Street. So they can have a food truck till 2 a.m. next to the residential there. And it just makes no sense that I'm for food trucks and everything. It just seems like it's going to be a major problem there when with the hours and being we're asleep by 2. I mean, those seniors are asleep by 2 in Charles Street Village, and they're within 100 feet of the 8 Ball. So that's a concern of mine. And the other thing is, what do you guys have against chickens? I mean, we've done the rooster thing, but there's more regulations on chickens here. Can we stop picking on chickens? Okay, thank you. Bye.
There are no further hands on Zoom. Mary Lemus, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. So bringing it back, we'll close public hearing. And then there was a few questions that I was going to ask if we can address. Do you have the questions, or doing to? There was a question first about.
Yeah, I'm going to address the question of food trucks on private property. So, and I just want to preface this by saying that there are many different layers within the ordinance and within the parklet standards, and we're going to, if the council approves this in whatever form, we're going to put together a document that will be available for the public and for business owners to help explain what all the different options are and what one needs to do. Because we acknowledge that, it's confusing because we're really trying to address many different situations in one go. So in the case of the 8 Ball, so that would actually not be a parklet. So when we're talking about food truck and food cart operation on a parklet, that really is only, the parklet standards would apply when it's on public parking, in a public parking space. So in their case, because it's a private parking lot, and I'm assuming that's where they would be, is in their private parking lot, what would apply are the standards within the ordinance that relate to food trucks and food carts operating on private commercial properties. And in that case, we're proposing there be a minor use permit requirement for properties that are in the historic core, which this property is. The property is within less than 100 feet of residences. However, those residences are not in residential zones. They're in the mixed-use zones. So as is proposed for outdoor dining and food trucks in parklets on public property, that distance is measured to residences. It only applies if the residences are on those residentially zoned properties, not mixed use. So it's more than 100 feet over from the 8 Balls parking lot to Charles Street Village, which is in a residential zone. But by virtue of being in the historic core, a minor use permit would be required. The minor use permits run with the land. So the 8 Ball would get the minor use permit, and that would apply even through change of business or change of business owner, and it would relate to food trucks on the property. So not each food truck would get a minor use permit. They need a business license. It's the property that would be obtaining the minor use permit.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, Vice Mayor?
Yeah.
You mentioned the properties at Charles Street, but also right behind the 8 Ball, there is a house and a set of apartments right abutted to that. So what
Those
is
are in
that?
its, so those are, sorry, it's not a residential zone.
Okay.
So the distinction is the different types of zoning districts. And so as proposed, and as is actually currently in the code, the requirement for a minor use permit for outdoor dining, and we're extending this to food trucks, is for properties that are not in residential zones.
That one's a CD.
Those
Or
are CD, which is
Okay.
downtown commercial, and
Even though
I
they're
think the
residences? Okay.
right.
So that's
So
the
in the
zoning of that.
co-housing is
Not co-housing.
also historic core, which is, but yeah, if you're talking about to the east, that's the
Yes.
CD zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
CD. Okay, thank you.
So-
I just was curious
Yeah.
because you mentioned Charles Street, but in
Right.
between that, there is more residences.
Yes, absolutely. And I acknowledge that, you know, that this might be something that, you know, this is a proposal. All of these parts are proposed, and so, you know, they can be adjusted. But that's the current proposal, yeah. However, again, this is historic core, which we would also propose to apply the minor use permit requirement to. And then that would involve noticing to all of the properties within 500 feet so that they know that this is proposed and they could comment on it.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Well, I'm thinking about the hours in relation to hours of the hosting business, say. So if we go to the other end of the, north of the plaza, like where Flagship was, say, that, so if a business owner there wanted to host a food truck, let's see, so on private property, sorry, I'm losing track. Can they have some outdoor dining area in conjunction with their food truck on private property, or is that prohibited?
They can, yeah.
They can. So currently, those businesses all close by 9 or something like that, but they could have a food truck with an outdoor dining area there open till 11, even after the businesses close, in this current plan, correct?
Yes.
But I think only if they get a special permit to extend the time that their
No.
business, right?
Nope.
Until 11 o'clock?
They can go till
Not
11.
if it's not a parklet on public property situation or an outdoor dining situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
So if I understand what Ben's asking and what your reply was, so a food truck that has permission from that property owner to be there, even though all the businesses are closed, that food truck can stay open till 11 o'clock.
Right. Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah. Depending on the zone, I don't know what zone that particular property is. I think it's DSP, but it's not.
So the
Historic
timeframes
core.
are with the zones, the timeframes.
Yeah, so citywide, the standard operating hours for retail uses is 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then if you want to go beyond that, then you need special approval through a use permit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that, I mean, so are we limited with that? If the business property owner on private property, there are no businesses opened, can we say that a food truck has to close when the last business closes? I mean, it just seems kind of strange, which is, I think, what Ben was getting at. It seems kind of strange that you'd have them be there on their own without a business being there and be open.
Yeah, I think the idea is to allow broader uses of property, expanding the kind of the activity generating elements of it beyond maybe what, you know, a salon may want to close at 6 or 8, but they can get some revenue by renting up some parking spaces, and then, you know, the community can, if you have a truck in a location regularly, then you know it's like going to a restaurant, but you're like, oh, I know I can get a quick bite from this place because they're always there during these hours.
Yeah, and I want to add too that in the event that the property doesn't have another business on it, we need some kind of a standard to tie to for that. If you do want to allow food trucks to be on vacant properties, then if we're going to set, a specific closing time that is just related to a business on the property or even adjacent businesses, we would need to probably fine tune that some more so that we could have food trucks on vacant properties if you are interested in doing that. And I've seen a lot of food trucks in Santa Rosa, and they have long had a permitting standard for food trucks. And I'm seeing them at gas stations and like transmission shops on busy corridors. And this would be like the gas station may still be open, but the transmission shop, is closed, or the tire store, or what have you. So, not all commercial areas within the city are necessarily going to be the same. So, we could also consider a more nuanced adjustment of the times.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too regarding the situation that Councilmember Ford brought up over where Sal's Pizzeria. There's mixed housing that's right above the business, and I know a lot of them close no later than 8 or 9 or something. And I can just imagine someone, a lot of loud noise there until 11 o'clock when there's people sleeping upstairs. That's a concern. I don't know what council members' thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I will say in that particular case, that's public parking out in the front. And so that would be a temporary parklet for a food truck or a food cart. And that would be limited in numbers of days out of the year. And it would also be subject to a license agreement with the city. And the city is my understanding, is free to negotiate the terms of a license agreement in any way that it chooses.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments from council? Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm still struggling with those conflicts and kind of edge cases. I mean, the examples, that you cite from Santa Rosa, I saw McCabe tacos at places where, the transmission shop might not be open. I'm worried about noise impacts from places that become gathering spots late at night. So I'm struggling to figure out
Yeah, I think
how
it
that might
depends
be
on where
addressed.
it's at. I think since just the first, is this the first reading? Yeah, the first review of this. Maybe take that information and see if what we can come back with later and see if there's some, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, because I also worry about the existing businesses that are kind of there. I mean, they're expecting their businesses to kind of be okay when they kind of close up and everything. And if there's people that are going to be there for hours and hours after they've already left, whatever precautions that they usually have when they're there, those all of a sudden aren't there anymore.
Well, I wonder if that difference would be public versus private property, because if it's private property, they have permission from that business to be there, right?
Well, from the owner of the property, not necessarily. So if you think of some of the little strip areas, those people are renting or leasing that spot, and, they close up their business thinking, everything is okay, but, having others coming in and out and being out and about, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I think it would need to be a conversation with, their tenant before they enter into an agreement.
I think there's been a lot of thought into this, and I like how it's been kind of divided into several specific plans. I think that's the initiative, to try to cover all these various scenarios, and really the scenarios are almost limitless. But I think that this is very considerate of that and the cleanup. I think there's some general disagreement maybe with what the state law allows that we don't have much control over, but I like the direction that these are going in.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
And just to be on the safe side, so do we have the opportunity to come back and revisit this if we start seeing problems in a certain kind of area? we don't have to do like a pilot with this, right? We can come back if we're starting to see issues bubble up.
That's correct, yeah, and we are somewhat at a disadvantage because this is all very speculative. When it comes to the sidewalk vendors, we, you know, as Councilmember Savage said, there's not a whole lot that we're able to do. We could introduce a permit program for sidewalk vendors, but when it comes to the food trucks and food carts, you know, the city has a lot of latitude.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Savage. I think that this is a good step forward, as one of the speakers said. I think this is a good step forward, and because we're new to this, there may be nuances that we hadn't thought about that we may have to come back and revisit, but I certainly think that it's a great step in the right direction to allow more opportunities for various different vendors in the community.
Councilmember Ford?
I agree with all that, and when we authorize a lot of mixed-use projects and encourage mixed use, I think I said this at the workshop in January, that I think it is the city's responsibility to continue to mediate conflicts that arise, and I'm worried that this, as proposed, gives commercial uses the winning hand without ability to step in on the part of the city, except after the fact via code enforcement. So that's my concern with sort of, you know, allowing until 11 o'clock, including outdoor dining near, you know, any housing that happens to be on the same property. One question about that was, condos are separate legal parcels, so that would be a separate property, is that correct?
We hadn't thought that nuance into it. I think it was more in keeping with what we were saying before, is if you move into a commercial area, you kind of anticipate some minimal level mixed use area, you anticipate some minimal level of commercial activity. Sure. We could say including condos and like make sure that the code is clear to kind of provide that differentiation or nuance to the code if we needed to.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess I'd like to see at least that sort of recognition that there's some opportunity to weigh in the decision. No, that's fine. I mean, yeah.
Clarifying about condos.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is there any clarification? Like,
Well, I mean, in your condo situation, you have the lot is usually owned by the collective, the HOA, and then the individual units are owned separately. So.
Right, and the language in here is the resident has to be on a separate property. So I'm wondering if.
So we do see the property lines. We do see the property lines on our GIS map, right, which is the tool we would likely to use to make a determination on this. And it is a separate legal parcel or property. So I think that would allow us that nuance.
In some cases, the airspace is separated from the land itself, but it's still considered a separate parcel, so I think we'd have to treat it as a separate parcel.
Yeah. Okay.
But then would the HOA kind of have something to say about that?
Well.
The HOA would have something to say about it unless does the state law deal with that? A lot of the housing laws do prevent HOAs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Food trucks, they can do that, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I like this plan. I'm excited to move forward with it. I also have some of the concerns that City Council was expressing today, but I'm glad that we can revisit it if things start becoming an issue. I'm glad about that. So we're looking for, to introduce an ordinance. Does someone want to introduce the ordinance?
Excuse me, I'm really sorry.
That's okay.
I realized I forgot to answer Mrs. Alderman's question related to the infractions for sidewalk vending. So that is an area where we are explicitly limited by state law. So that the language that appears in the ordinance related to enforcement, that is state law, and that is, our hands are tied as far as further enforcement goes. And then we actually have a few changes we'd like to request that the council make in the ordinance, some things that we noticed at a late time before, after this went out to you. So if it's okay with you, I would like to tell you what those are. We should have a quick little list.
Sure.
Okay. And we won't let it happen again. Okay, so
Pages, so we can.
we have 5 altogether. Page 132 in your packet. Look this up too, and it's section 7 on your page. Look at that. And, okay, sorry, I'm getting there. Okay, so the language currently says this is related to compliance with our ban on polystyrene. And so the ordinance draft says that the vendor shall refrain from use of those. We'd like to change the language to they will comply with the section, including a prohibition on disposable items, including polystyrene. So it's a wording adjustment to be more correct. Okay, the next one is on page 133 of your packet, and you'll find that in, I'm sorry, it's page 132. So back to 132. D1, we need to add language to, I'm sorry. I thought I had it. D1, where is it? Yeah, there it is, okay. I'm sorry. E1, B, we need to include language that requires that food trucks not be placed in the vision triangle, which our code defines as 35 feet on either side of a driveway, or, I'm sorry, an intersection. So this is maintaining the vision triangle in 1B.
Can you tell them the specific text that you're adding or deleting?
I can't. On that particular one, I cannot.
Reference to the vision triangle.
Reference to the vision triangle, yeah.
We're going to include a reference to the vision triangle in the,
You're introducing ordinance text, so I just want to make sure it gets introduced properly, so that's why I'm asking you to be specific. Or do you have the language, or it needs to be rewritten?
it will need to be added for
have
the
to.
second
Okay.
reading.
So if you give us the direction, then we can
Yeah.
add the
Oh, here it
language
is,
and bring
okay,
it.
I found it.
That's right.
Okay. It's E1E. The food truck or cart and its operation shall not block circulation, emergency access, access to other approved uses on the property, or the vision triangle as defined in the code. Okay, the next one is on page 134. Down at the bottom, section F. That section F currently says additional standards for food trucks, operating, et cetera, et cetera. We'd like to change the language to say additional standards in the commercial industrial zoning district for food trucks operating on an intermittent short-term basis on private property and in the public right-of-way. There's, yeah, two more. Okay, are you ready for the next one? Okay, page 135, 3A. It says food trucks shall park only in approved parking spaces. We would like to change that to food trucks shall park only in allowable parking areas. Okay, and then last one, also page 135, way up at the top of that page, letter C. We want to strike that because that no signage shall be permitted that is not affixed to the truck. It is redundant with a previous section related to signage being confined to a food truck.
So can I point out one other one?
Sure.
On page 132 in D1, there's an extra word "as" that just needs to be stricken. I only saw it because you first pointed us there, thinking there was a correction there.
132.
D1, yeah. After the second sentence is just an extra word "as."
Okay, that might have been removed in the final already,
okay.
but, okay. I apologize for these last-minute corrections,
Thank you.
folks.
Okay, so then we'll be looking for an introduction with the changes that you noted. Okay. We don't have to list all the changes, right? No. Okay. Okay, does someone want to make the introduction?
We've held the public hearing, and I'd like to introduce an ordinance amending the Cotati Municipal Code, Title 17, Land Use, and Chapter 9.36, Conduct in Parks, Plazas, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Places to establish standards for food and mobile businesses, including all of the noted changes that were requested by staff.
Okay, thank you.
Second?
Okay. And we'll do a roll call for this one.
Councilmember Savage,
Aye.
Councilmember Ford,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey,
Yes.
Mayor Lemus.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to the regular agenda. We're going to take a few minutes, 5-minute break, and then we'll return to the regular agenda.
I think I have a good take on it. That was really helpful because everything kind of spelled out a lot of pages. I was just like, I don't think. Well, and I just took notice of you on the actual food truck that would be on us to get the permit, and so now I understand that would be, and I was also worried about something like that cost for the. Oh, wow. So significant. Right. Well, and as a business that doesn't make any money off of the food trucks, that might not make any sense for us to. So it's just, I mean, we don't, we're not. Besides getting food into our customers that are drinking, we're not getting any. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know how that would work out, where their bottom line is. Yeah, well, most of them actually won't be the ones that charge all the they have like mandatory minimums. Yeah, we need to be there. So it's been hard for us to even find trucks that are willing to just come to pay per plate without having a mandatory minimum. Yes. There's 3 spots. Yeah. So what we're proposing is a reform. Yeah, well, we only want to do it like once a week anyway. Right. So that would be something that you would just do it, it's like $3,500. Right. So 40 days out of the year. And that would be a license. And then it would be on a truck to get there. Good to see you too. They would need, so we would need to have a license. Yeah, I know. Oh, okay. So it would cost more to have trucks be in our parking lot. We like that. Have them take out public. And then also, what about just private meter? Would you charge the same amount for something, like say Lombard uses Coach to serve and that was my big fear, is like, how much is, this gonna cost us? Right. Yeah, but then it would make sense if we did it every year, right? But we're not, yeah. So it's one cost, it's not really for the, oh, it's just one. So is it like the conditional use permit? Oh. Do it. And then it's done. That's, I thought, I was thinking it was no. Okay, so once it's done, we're good. And just to address the Women's Bureau, us having we have the conditional use permit that actually blocks us from the areas night anyway. So that's, it's not going to be. Okay, well, what I understand better. And so as far as getting that, we should probably do it sooner than later. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to our regular agenda. Oh, back to order. Yeah, the meeting is back to order. And we're going back to our regular agenda, and we have a resolution to protect community safety in the event of a significant immigration action. And we have a report on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Council. So, as you'll recall, in the March 24th meeting, the City Council and the Community Police Advisory Committee held a joint meeting and discussed possible options to prepare for the possibility of significant immigration actions that could disrupt and potentially endanger the community. And this included a comprehensive review and discussion of all the various actions taken in other states, well, not in other, at least all the major actions taken in other states, certainly all the actions taken within the Bay Area communities, and within Sonoma County, of course. So after going through all the different options and taking public comment, the joint council Community Police Advisory Committee members directed staff to bring forward a resolution similar to what the County of Sonoma had done, and that's attached to this staff report tonight. And the attached resolution restates our values as a community. It restates the existing immigrant protections in California and also provides additional measures that would protect, that are intended to protect our community, that are within the ability of a city like Cotati to implement if the federal government were to come into the community and create sort of that general chaotic situation that you saw in Minneapolis as an example. And it also directs staff to engage with the County Department of Emergency Services to determine how to best collaborate in the event of some type of action like this, if it were to occur in Cotati. And when the council and the Community Police Advisory Committee discussed this, the Department of Emergency Services had not yet finished what they're calling the concept of operations, CONOP, on this specific type of if this issue were to happen, how they would respond. So that was still draft, so it wasn't part of the review, but the resolution that is attached does direct staff to continue to work with the county to complementarily, hopefully come up with a complementary set of actions that we could take that would tie in with what the county is also doing at the same time. And it also incorporates some specific elements that were discussed at the meeting. And some of those are bulleted in the staff report, but just generally concerns about federal immigration searches without valid warrants, ensuring police response to emergency calls about potential immigration actions, collection and documentation of information that could potentially be used later for legal proceedings. I think primarily like criminal type proceedings that the DA or maybe the Attorney General might pick up on, as has happened in other states, and finding referring to immigrant resources linked to the city website. We already have a link on our website, but continuing to keep it active and current so that people can find that link in the future. And lastly, the resolution also does make reference to the various non-governmental organizations in Sonoma County that are addressing immigrant legal protections, as well as the wraparound services, which are, they're also available in that link, that same link that goes out to that, goes to basically a compilation of resources for both for immigrant legal protection as well as just other services, as I mentioned. The main commitment, the main immediate commitment, if the federal government doesn't do anything, the main immediate commitment is just to continue to work with Department of Emergency Services to, as I said earlier, work on that operational plan. So how, kind of game and plan out how that operational plan would work and how we interact with other jurisdictions as well as the county. If the federal government were to come in and, do a repeat of something like Minneapolis, it would obviously drive a lot of costs, but it would just be, what we saw in those other communities was a very chaotic situation. And in addition to the issues that we saw with the immigrants, it was just generally a lot of issues with community safety in general, regardless of immigrant or not, by that kind of activity. So that would create a lot of, just the nature of that type of thing would create just a lot of potential overtime, could create legal costs, but that's completely unforeseeable and would completely hinge on the federal government having to, if they came in and they sort of created that sort of chaotic environment, then it would trigger that. Legal action, as I mentioned, would be fully at the discretion of the council ultimately, so that would be something that the council at that time, if that were to happen, would have to decide to embark on. It would be the overtime and sort of the general community protection that would be outside of any of our controls if that situation were to exist. So with that, I'll just end there, but I'm happy to take any questions if the council has any.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I love the way, I really thought it was very well crafted, put together. But I'm going to ask if my council members have any questions. Anyone in the council? Questions? No? Okay, no questions. Okay, so we'll open it up to public comment at this time. Anyone in the public here in the room that would like to comment on this item? Okay, go ahead.
We keep hearing about Minneapolis. Well, when you go to a protest something and you're carrying a gun, or you take your vehicle and you run it at officers, you get the results that you would expect from people trying to defend themselves. Wasn't Minneapolis also the home of George Floyd, where local police, which you're relying on here to protect us from ICE, wasn't that a local police officer that killed Mr. Floyd? I mean, there's a lot of, this is not a cut and dried situation. If you want to eliminate problems with ICE, you don't dox the people, you don't follow them around, you don't put websites on attempting to stop them from doing their job, just much as the mayor of Oakland were informing people that they were coming for them. All of this stuff is illegal based on you're interfering with law enforcement doing their job. And this is the federal government's job. Now, rather than fighting them with all of these local ordinances, and you're going to pass this ordinance, I know that, or the resolution, or whatever you want to call it, and it's reactionary, as your police told you. It's not going to be something that you're going to be able to do anything about. You know, the police officer is going to be there anyway in a large situation where there's a lot of ICE agents around just to keep the peace, and they'll be recording it. That's all fine. That's part of their job anyway. You don't need an ordinance to do that. So my question is, why wouldn't you want your police to inform ICE? I mean, this is a conservative view. I know this. I've heard it on talk shows. That why wouldn't you want them to be able to tell ICE to come in and pick up a person that was a murderer or whatever that you have incarcerated in your own jail, or the county in their jail? Why is it that you are fighting getting rid of these people that shouldn't be here in the first place, that were caused by a senile president opening the borders wide open? And we have cells from the Middle East. We have all of these problems. People overstay their visas. But we're not interested in correcting that. We're worried about protecting Juan down at the local Mexican restaurant because he's a nice guy. Well, if he's here illegally, he broke the law. Either we're a nation of laws or we're not. And I find this sort of action, fighting the enforcement of laws, is really repugnant. It's not what we do as council people. I was a councilman, so I know. It's not what we support as citizens unless you're part of the people that want those borders wide open because they want labor, cheap labor or whatever, or for whatever reason, for votes. I don't know. But to me, this is totally unnecessary. You're not going to accomplish anything with it because when ICE comes in here, they have the right to do what they're doing. Then you are interfering with the enforcement of law on a federal level. You're opening yourself up to litigation, as Mr. Obid has told you. It's going to be costly. I'm just telling you, you need to be careful. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Lemus. Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
Hi. I'm anti-ICE as much as anybody. I'm very Democrat, all that kind of things. What I object to here is that the money that the city has spent to try to get this ordinance in for a national issue, at the cost of senior services and anything like that. You're catering to a certain group here in Cotati. It was only a group that came in mass to do the social justice part, and we don't have enough. This has happened over and over again. We don't have time to money. Mr. Bacher makes probably $250 an hour. Damien makes $100 an hour to do these kind of things. All the staff here, to make this an agenda item, it takes away from what we have. Skeletal services here in the city, and we're spending all this money to put this on. And the chief, if anybody had gone to the police advisory committee, he had explained why, how the local police were coordinating and all this kind of stuff, and that wasn't really a big issue, but then it became a political issue for you all. And to get your thing in the Press Democrat and top out Santa Rosa and all this kind of stuff. And that's not the kind of governance we need. We need people concerned about what is happening in our city, not potential things that may happen. Cotati would not be a target of all this. they go for Santa Rosa or something. This is silly to spend this much money and this much time on all of this. It's very political, and I just don't like it. You're putting national issues before the needs of citizens of Cotati. Thank you.
Seeing no further hands on Zoom, Mayor Lemus, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. So I'm bringing it back to the council for any comments or a motion.
I want to say a few things. So I'm proud of the Cotati Police Department, and our police department is not the Minneapolis Police Department of 5 years ago, and our police department is very focused on keeping our residents safe. I think the serve and protect mission that is classic for law enforcement is alive and well here, and this resolution is carefully crafted to be focused on local issues, which is how our city will respond if something happens here. So I'm proud of the work that the staff put into carefully crafting this resolution. I especially appreciate the number 5, be it resolved, that the documents that we're trying to learn from experiences of other places in the country, that it doesn't work for local law enforcement to stay away saying that's not our job, that it's more effective to be there and engage, to respond when our residents need help, and do what we can to prevent the worst abuses. And we saw plenty of examples from elsewhere in the country where the presence of local law enforcement did deter some of the worst abuses by untrained or undertrained federal agents. So I'm proud to support the resolution, and happy that we took it on. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I particularly liked how the points refer to existing codes that we have to protect people, and also working with other agencies in the county. I think we have a lot of resources already in place, and it's good to call those out for individuals to be aware of that, and then continuing to have a robust information on our website for people. I think this is a great response to the numerous people who came and talked about their concern on this.
Thank you. I'm also very proud of the work that staff, and you took all the information that the public brought that we all discussed, and in essence, you created this resolution that I think hit all the right points, from state to statewide laws, to the Constitution, to the California Education Code, to the nonprofits that are serving immigrant communities, and the law enforcement chief's letter, even to the upcoming emergency service CONOPS. That's important for us to also kind of have something in the same pattern for our community. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So someone want to make a motion?
I'd be happy to move that we adopt a resolution to uphold the civil rights, dignity, health, and safety of our immigrant population and all Sonoma County residents.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. For the next item, I'll ask if you want to stand and join us for the land acknowledgement and the Pledge of Allegiance. The city of Cotati, is it on? I can just do it here. The city of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for our millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land that we are on. And now a Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And now we're moving to the city manager's report and then council member reports.
All right, so thank you, Mayor, Council. The East Cotati Avenue Road Preservation Project that the council awarded a meeting or two ago is expected to start soon after the rain subsides, so that's coming up in the not-too-distant future. Also, the repair to the arch at the corner of 116 and Old Red should be happening or starting soon, as well as the pathway that was awarded actually here tonight. So that'll also be getting going here very soon. Earlier, it was the Mascots program, the sort of the 101 corridor, north-south corridor, transit connections and refinement that was mentioned earlier in this meeting. That is on the headlines of the city website if someone wants to read more about it. There's links there on the headline for the website. And we also expect to put that out on social media soon as well, so everyone's aware of those changes. This Sunday is the Historical Society Annual Chicken Barbecue at the Cotati Room here from noon to 4. And tickets can be purchased at the door or in advance at their website. Also happening this Sunday is the first paint day of our first ever Cotati Community Art Project. So this is out at Sunflower Park, right? We're transforming the exterior walls of that restroom out there. That's it's cinder block. It's been, historically, it's been tagged on a pretty frequent basis. And so now that the park improvements themselves are basically done, this is one of the last steps. We have some signage that we're doing too that has to go in the park, but basically this is one of the last steps to paint the outside of the walls. So this first day will be priming only. That's the Sunday will be priming only, but then it's going to be a mural. And for each Sunday, after this Sunday, the next Sunday, and the Sunday after are already scheduled to be able to start painting the murals. So the first Sunday is basically priming the wall, getting it ready for the mural. The second 2 Sundays will be the murals. And it's a volunteer effort for all ages and abilities that can join us to create something special. It's 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on those days. And this is also, you can find this in the city news section of our website if anyone's interested in signing up for that to volunteer. The Veranda Fletty Ranch is hosting a volunteer day this Saturday, the 18th of April, from 10 to noon to plant a flower garden. Anyone 12 and older is invited. Friday, April 24th, we have our spring free open ranch day from 3 to 5:30 p.m. That includes animal feedings, arts, crafts, treats, and more. And then on Saturday, April 25th, so the next day, we have our wool and garden workshop from 10 to noon. And it's a hands-on educational activities include a wool potting station, demonstrations of working wool into a raised garden bed, and participants get to take home a seedling they prepared with wool to transplant it in their own garden. So if anyone's interested in doing that, that is coming right up. And we also, I don't have the notes here in front of me, but this last weekend at the ranch, we also had some activities there. We had an EcoWise workshop, which was about home gardening. We also had a sheep shearing demonstration and a compost day and volunteer workshop. So there's a lot going on over there now that we're getting out of the rainy season into the spring. And I'll just stop there, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. So we'll move on to city council reports.
The 2x2x2 meeting was canceled, and I've not had any other meetings since our previous council member.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll be quick. The Cotati Climate Ready Fair was just after our last meeting, and several of us were there, and it was a great event again. Congrats to staff who pulled that off.
Great. Okay, Vice Mayor?
I'll try and be quick on a couple of these things because, yeah. So on 326 and 327, I attended the League of California Cities Policy Committee meetings, and I was at the Public Safety where we took some positions on some bills, we opposed some, and we took no position on others. We had a very interesting conversation about e-bikes, and I actually happened to pop in because my other policy committee got done early, and the Public Works one was looking at a Cal Cities e-bike policy framework. So more to come on e-bikes. Some of the cities are having really terrible times with those. And on rev and tax, we opposed the one bill that was there. It was a initiative by the Howard Jarvis folks, so we put an oppose on that one. And then there was a very interesting discussion around what happened with the denial of the city managers group and the tax stuff. So they agreed that that group will get together again and try again. So that was good, because I think a lot of people were upset that that didn't move forward, and that the city managers had taken so much time and effort to kind of come to something, and it was rejected by the board. So more will happen on that, and I'm sure that we'll hear more from Damien later. On April 1st, I attended LAFCO meeting. It was actually kind of long, and one of the speakers alluded to it. There is Alexander Valley group that wants to create a water district, only the items that they want to do are very Sigma-like. So they want all these Sigma powers, and they want to be the Sigma for that. And so we kind of went through a lot of that. The other thing that they want to do is groundwater recharge, but they want the tribe to pay for them. Apparently they got some money, and so they are going to charge them for service to do this. And we kind of said, well, did the tribe agree to this? And we're science. Anyways, we went through a whole lot of things. I had a lot of questions. It was great because one of the gentlemen on our board is from a water district, so he kind of went. And his biggest rub on what they're proposing is they're proposing it be landowner. And so basically, it's the big winery landowners that will be the board, and that they will, kind of decide for everyone else. And a lot of folks didn't really like that. So it went back and forth, and we had some options whether to approve it or deny it or whatever. And it became obvious, I think, that we were headed in a direction that they weren't happy with. So they agreed to come back next month and try and answer our questions. So we just kind of put a continuation on that, but it got pretty, it was really a very interesting one.
Can I ask what a Sigma is?
The Sustainable Groundwater Management Agency. Thank you, yeah. And it was very interesting. So up in that area in Alexander Valley, there are actually 2 basins. Neither of them have been declared in need of having Sigma. They're both low at this point, but they were the area that they want to pick for their thing is kind of, my word I used was cherry-picked just a part of it. They didn't want to take the whole basin, and it's just like, well, how's that going to work? So, yeah, that was interesting. On 4/3, I attended the North Bay League of California Cities Executive Board meeting, and we kind of were looking at activities for both the league leaders and the upcoming events with that group. On 4/8, I attended the Marin-Sonoma Mosquito and Vector Control District, and we got a great presentation. They're moving forward on building their new building, so they're far enough along that we got a pretty good presentation on that, I want to say. I guess in you guys' building terms, it was like the 10% building on it, so more to come. They're kind of fine-tuning things, but I think that'll be great when they get that done.
Still here in town? Mm-hmm. At their park?
Yeah, but they've got that unique property out there on Hellman Lane that has the wetlands all around it, so they're trying to place things kind of in between, like all these. It's a very challenging site, so that'll be really interesting. On April 9th, I attended the Sonoma County mayors and council members, but I'll let the mayor talk about that. And then last but not least, yesterday I did attend the Sonoma County Transit, and So mascots. Mascots has been being worked on for a couple of years now. It has had a ton of outreach. They did surveys with people on the, they actually had people ride on the buses and talk to people. They did booth, stuff. And the whole thing that it's trying to do is to coordinate the services that are offered on the 101 corridor. So that was kind of the whole purpose of that. And what's very interesting, and this has never happened, you had, let me get them here, you had Petaluma Transit, Sonoma County Transit, Transportation of Marin, Santa Rosa City Bus, MTC, the Golden Gate Bridge Authority, Marin Transit, the Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authority, and SMART, all working together to kind of do this. So they've come up with this schedule, and as was pointed out, there are some slimming down of things. It's not perfect, but it really is that public transit is public transit, but you have to pay for it, and it's getting very, very expensive. And just to give you some numbers on this, to put it in perspective, because our next item had to do with the coordinated claim for transit funding that gets processed through. So of the tax, what is the TDA? What does TDA stand for? I keep forgetting. The tax.
So the TDA is a Transportation Development Act. It's like it's
Okay.
some funding that comes, yeah.
Thank you. All this acronym. So that amount is $27 million. And since 1996, Golden Gate Transit was getting 25% of that right off the top before anybody else got any money. And quite a few of us on SCTA kind of said, well, why is that? And they said, well, in 1996, we had this agreement. And, we're like, well, we knew, particularly in Sonoma County, we were not getting much for that. And over the years, maybe in 1996, we had much better service. But right now, we have, not very much. So anyways, so that amount, if you took the 25%, it was $6.9 million. Well, through this mascot work and all the work that everyone's been put together, they looked at it from being, what are your services you're giving? So how many people you're serving? What are your routes? So it's a performance-based. So based upon that formula that everyone agreed on through this whole process, they are now for this year only going to get $800,518. So it's a very, very significant difference. And what that means for us is our other agencies with our local buses, that money comes back into our buses to be able to fix our systems. So the Sonoma County Transit is going to be doing a strategic plan, and they are going to start that really quickly now. It'll take them about a year to do that, but they'll be taking all kinds of input from people all over the county to kind of set the routes up so that we can kind of have better routes in the county. And in addition to that, there's a lot more work happening between Santa Rosa and Petaluma and Sonoma County Transit, so we can get better connections between the cities in the community too. It'll take a little bit longer. And the other thing, lastly, about mascots is that it's a pilot, it's a 3-year pilot, and they will continue to evaluate what's going on. So there will be evaluation and tweaks to what's going on based upon that. So at a minimum, there'll be an annual report on what's working and what's not working, and adjustments accordingly. So,
A question, does SMART get any of the TDA monies?
yes,
Okay.
yes, they do. I can tell you how much.
Will it increase now with the increased routes and
Yeah,
everything? Okay.
yeah, yeah. And all of them are based upon their performance, so how many people they take and how many routes and all of that. So it's a better way of redistributing the money, and it's a better way of getting people to work together. And like I said, this has not ever happened before. So this is really pretty incredible that that many agencies were able to coordinate the 101 route, and now you're going to have smaller coordinations. So the Marin regional buses, they're going to coordinate their schedules to try and make those better. So it was, I know it's difficult for some people, but some of those buses, in particular, some of the ones at night, there would be one person on them. I mean, and to have I don't know how many people a bus holds, but, you know, to have a 50-person bus, have one person on it, it's
They
just
can call Uber instead.
it's just not cost effective. So anyways, they're working with folks on some of those. They have a temporary route for a little bit to see what options, you know, they can do to take care of that. So big changes, but I think in the long run, public transit is important, and we need to have it out there, but we kind of have to revitalize it and make it work. At the meeting yesterday were the new executive directors for Santa Rosa Transit, Petaluma, and Sonoma County Transit. And it was interesting, they were all women, which kind of, one lady, she'd been there for 5 days, one lady had been there for 4 months, and the other had been there for a little bit. But they're very excited about working together and getting the routes together. So more to come on that, and I know it may be painful for some people, but I think in the long run, it will be better, and they want it to be better. So sorry for the long report, but I think
That's
it's
great.
important.
Very good information, thank you. So kind of follow along that theme of streamlining. On March 25th, I went to the Homeless Coalition Board meeting, and I don't know if I touched on it last time, but they're reducing funds again this year, so they're looking at ways to streamline it. The main presentation was on the MRG report, which provides an assessment and a roadmap for the Homeless Coalition Board and health services. It's a system realignment to reach what they want to call one system of care, where the organizations can either scale up or scale down as needed. And the recommendations include advancing the one system of care, strengthening leadership between the Continuum of Care, COC, and the Department of Health Services, regionalizations. I think right now they say that they have maybe a shelter in each of the 4 regions, increasing leverage, and reducing duplication. Again, there's a lot of nonprofits, there's a lot of duplication happening, so part of their work will be looking at that. And also a data system, like an HMS to coordinate all the system information, because my understanding is right now, different organizations have different HIMS or data systems, and there's no way of knowing exactly how many homeless the population. So that's a good way that they can all get on the same page with one data system. And during the policy committees, I went to Environmental Quality Policy Committee, as well as the Revenue and Taxation Policy. And there was a presentation by California Biodiversity Alliance, and there was an analysis of all the different bills and discussion. A lot of them were around wildfire, disaster preparedness, and load-serving entities with the Public Utility Commission. On April 1st, I went with city staff and Rohnert Park to the Board of Supervisors to have a conversation about EIFD. It was our first meeting with the Board of Supervisors to review our intention and timeline for an EIFD, which is an Enhanced Infrastructure Finance District, to unlock potential revenue in our community in the future. The next steps is a fiscal analysis for board review at their June 2nd meeting. And the county's looking at all the cumulative requests because they have Santa Rosa, they have West County, and they have an application from us. So other cities are also interested in doing an EIFD. I also understand that the RDA, which is that the redevelopment agency or at the state level, is looking at a similar process for affordable housing, the RDA?
The Renewal Enterprise District or the?
It was a different one, RDA.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
the
I don't
state
know.
level department's looking at a similar process for affordable housing. So we have like an aggressive timeline, but I think that's not going to work. I think we'll have to adjust our hopes of having this EIFD done earlier. On the same day, we went from there to the RED District, which is a Renewable Enterprise District. And so we submitted an application to join the RED, which is regional collaboration with a potential for innovative housing funding solutions. And the Red District Board members will review it and let us know. So there was some discussion and some concerns, but overall, it was positive, and we hope to get good results out of the meeting. On the 2nd, April 2nd, I went to a Sonoma Clean Power meeting, and there was a strategic plan review with really good examples of the different phases of strategic planning that they're doing. And in the discussion of regulation, there was a lot of discussion about the PCIA, which is a power charge indifference adjustment, and RECs, the renewable energy credits, because this is ongoing discussions with PG&E about the rates that they want to keep, including for a lot of their bundle users and even people that leave PG&E. They want to still kind of recoup that cost. And renewable energy credits are another thing that PG&E is kind of thinking about. Do those expire or not? And maybe they don't want to use a lot of the credits. So the board, the Sonoma Clean Power Board, really stressed to the staff that we need to take a proactive approach and maybe engage a statewide campaign to inform the community on what's happening. Because a lot of times the public doesn't understand what's happening with the PCIA and the renewable energy credits. So it was a good conversation. On the 6th, I went to a regional parks meeting where we met with a consultant, Boulder Advocacy, in preparation for the Measure M initiative and how the nonprofit foundation can support that. On the 6th, I went to the Water Advisory Committee meeting, and we voted unanimously to pass the water transmission system budget and rates. And we did learn that the water conditions are dry at the basins, which means that we have to release water. Unless we're in extreme drought or very dry conditions, then we can hold on to our water. Because we're only dry, we have to release water from the Lake Mendocino. So we weren't very happy about that. On the 7th, I went to the Rotary Club in Santa Rosa. They requested a presentation on Cotati. So I presented the State of the City report that we received late last year. I got notes from Damien, and I presented that. They were really impressed and happy with what Cotati's doing and asked if we can bring that to Santa Rosa. On the 9th, I went with Vice Mayor to the mayors and council members, and there was a Measure M presentation again by the Director of Regional Parks, Bert Whitaker, and there was a presentation on the political landscape on the federal all the way to the local level with Professor David McQuan from SSU, and the topic was political outlook and dynamics of living and governing in an era of hyper-local polarized politics. And the number 2 issues he said people are looking at right now are affordability, hope, and progress, and a vision moving forward are the top things that he had mentioned people are looking for right now. On the 11th, I went to the Great Literacy Adventure that SCO and the Northern California Public Media put on. It was different reading events for families with even like a book reading and all kinds of different nonprofits that were there. That was really good. And then the 13th this week, was that Monday? That was yesterday, Monday. I was invited to go to a Peace Pole dedication at Credo High School, and I was able to share some words on peace, on May Peace Prevail on Earth. So we talked about how students themselves in hallways can promote peaceful activities and promote peace at school. And the Peace Pole was beautiful. It's right to the right of the parking lot at the Credo High School, and it has, I want to say 6 or 7 different languages on the pole, as well as the LGBT flag, and it's in Braille as well on there. So if you get a chance, go and stop by. It was also, earlier before this meeting was a Cotati Chamber of Commerce meeting, and they are currently looking for sponsors for the Cotati Music Festival. That's on June 20th. And they also have a new president. Their new president is Heather Oliveira from Recology. She's the new president of the Cotati Chamber. Let's see. They're seeking sponsors, and they're updating the new membership forms because they have an initiative. They're going to go out to look for new members, but they're updating their forms. So that's my report that I have. A little busy. So now we're going to go out to closed session. So we're going to go to closed session. We'll return. Thank you.
Mayor, just before we
I'm sorry.
adjourn, just public comment real quick.
Sorry. So let's ask for public comment. So public comment in a closed session, which is a conference with city labor negotiators. So is there any public comments on Zoom?
Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon if you'd like to comment on the closed session topic. Seeing no hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll go to closed session. Okay, thank you. So we return from closed session and there's nothing to report. The next item is information received after the agenda was posted.
Yes, there was a written comment received that was posted to the HTML agenda, just the one written comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 9:44. Thank you. Good night.